Hey guys, John with Fathouse Performance. Today we're going to be doing our S197 coolant tank install. Pretty straightforward install, but we'll kind of go over all the ins and outs. Alright guys, so before you start any job, it's always good to put some protection down, whether it be some film or microfibers or towels. You don't want to damage any of this plastic or any other surfaces on your vehicle. Aside from that, we just need to be starting with a cool vehicle. If it's hot, this is going to be pressurized, so let your vehicle cool down beforehand. But this car is cool and ready to go, so we just need to unscrew this cap. Now this cap is a little bit different thread design than the new tank, so we won't be reusing it, so you can set it to the side. Then go ahead and get this one drained out. Now these tanks have baffles in them, so when you're evacuating it out like this, you're going to have to kind of move your hose around a few different sides. And then once you get it low enough, you'll actually be able to see where the lower coolant hose comes in. You can kind of get your hose down into there and suck a little bit more out of the hose. Even doing all this, you always seem to still get a few dribbles, so it's always good to rinse your engine bay off after you get done with a job like this, but it's nice to not have a big unnecessary mess if we can avoid it. Alright, that's going to have to do. Okay, so next we need to get the upper hoses off. There's going to be these two smaller ones up here. There's also going to be a lower hose, but we'll wait till we get these removed. The tank unbolted and pulled up a little bit to get to that lower clamp a little bit easier. This particular car has been modified, so it's got a Whipple supercharger on it. So you'll notice this is what your factory clamps will look like for those of you who have stock cars or not modified heavily. The little spring clamp, and I'll show you a couple different ways for getting this one on and off. And then, since like I said, this one's modified, it's just got a regular hose clamp on there. So let's start with this factory one. They do make specific pliers to get these clamps off and make it a little bit easier. Of course, you can use just a basic pair of needle nose. The trouble with that is you can potentially scratch this coating, and some people are very particular about the coatings on their car, all retaining originality. So if you can get the proper tool, it definitely makes the job easier. It even locks it into the little stop there, so now this slides out of the way nicely. And then this back one, just a pair of hose clamps. So just undo that with the little socket. Kind of work these hoses off here. Now, there might be a little bit of coolant that dribbles out of these hoses, so I always grab a little bit of paper towel on the ready here and try to, again, minimize any mess. Kind of drain it out a little bit. I'm going to take this clamp off so it doesn't fall down to the depths of the engine bay while we're moving stuff around. You can also kind of get your hose kind of back behind something so it doesn't pop in front of your face. You got to be careful going too low with them though, because any residual coolant might continue to drain out of the hose. Same on this one. Kind of work it back and forth, pull it off. Again, make sure no coolant comes out. I always try to preempt it a little bit. Got a few drops there. We'll just kind of push this one back here. And let's go ahead and get the tank unbolted. Again, I like to set my bolts and any other stuff that might fall away from the car because there's just so many voids for this stuff to fall into. But now that we got our bolts undone, we can lift the tank up here and I'll show you what this bottom hose is we got to get to. So that's the lower hose there, and again, it's the factory style spring clamp. And this one's a larger one, so you're gonna need a larger style of these tools, and this is another very common style spring clamp. They make many different varieties, but so you can get on there on both tangs. They even make nice ones that are remote operated on a longer cable where you can kind of have it extra hand free, but these will work. And we get it on down past the barb a little bit. All right. Now, for everybody warning, even draining this tank, there's still likely to be a little bit of coolant coming out of here, so I'm gonna grab a couple towels ahead of time. Pull this back up here. See if this hose comes off easily. Yep, just a little bit of rotation. Sometimes if the hoses hang up on you, they have a hose removal tool which kind of looks like a little pick, and you can kind of get in there around the rubber and get it free from the plastic, and then it'll come off a little bit easier, but these usually come off pretty straightforward. And once you get near the end, I kind of slow down so it doesn't come flying out and spraying coolant everywhere, but you can see there's going to be a little bit of coolant there. All right. The other thing is, if I were just to let this hose go down right now, there's a little bit of coolant in there, it would make a little bit of a mess. I'm going to get my suction tool, pull just a little bit more of that coolant out. All right, so now we're going to be installing the new tank back into the vehicle, and basically same as the reverse order. First thing we're going to hook up is our lower hose here. Kind of work it back and forth. Slide it on up in there. Now then, before we bolt it back down, when you get our clamp worked back up, so again, grab your pliers. Get on the spring clamp. And once you get your tool set right, kind of aggravating one hand sometimes. Golly. We'll get it, I promise. Here we go. All right, now you're going to get back over the hump here. Just take your time, takes a little bit of effort to get it all the way back up into the factory spot. You'll be able to see on the hose where it was in the factory. It's going to be a little bit past the hump. I always kind of like to try to get things back exactly as they were. There we go, back in the same groove. Now you got that place, you can set your tank back down. There's going to be a tab right here that goes into the slot in the factory radiator cover, just like the OEM tank, so kind of guide that right back down to its receiver groove, and once you do that, lean it back forward and it should line right up with your bolt holes. Next, we're going to bolt that thing down. You're going to put your factory bolts back in. Now these little nut clips these go into, they kind of move around a little bit, so you might have to reposition them just slightly in the hole, but go ahead and start your bolts by hand. One, and then the other here. You can run them down, get them close with the power tool, but don't go all the way down with it. You want to do a final torque value on those, so let's get them most of the way down. And that's about tight. All right. And grab your torque wrench. Factory spec on these are 71 inch-pounds. You could probably go as high as 89, but we'll do the factory spec on these. Those metal spring clamps don't have a lot of strength, so you can't get too carried away. Some people also like to do some dress-up bolts on these tanks as well, so that's always an option. The torque value will still be the same though. Torque this guy down. said, I stopped a little bit early too. I don't like to go too tight. There we go. Now, next we can go ahead and get our front hose hooked back up. So slide it on like so. If you got the factory hose, you're gonna want to have that white line just basically facing straight up. There is your spring clamp. Now this factory spring clamp, since we got it in a locked position, we have to pry that tag back down and it'll release down. So get a little pair of screwdrivers and then your plier clamps. And then get a little bit of tension off of it. Come in here with a screwdriver on the side and kind of pop it up like so, and then it releases. And you let your clamp right back down. Now, this other hose, like I said, this was a aftermarket car as far as the Whipple supercharger. So this hose is going to be a little bit different looking than if you had a factory one. If your car is still factory, it's going to be a hose like this where it's got the white line on the spring clamp. So let's go ahead and get that one hooked back up. We'll need to grab the clamp that Whipple provided with this particular build. So we'll clamp back on there, slide it on, and we'll tighten that guy down. These clamps, you don't want to go too tight with them, but just enough to where it's not going to leak. If you go a little too tight, you can deform the clamp or the hose and just cause another leak inadvertently. So that looks pretty good there. Now in our tank, we're going to have one more hose to hook up to this additional port in the back. And what this is a pressure relief for, say, the engine overheated or a head gasket or something like that, to where it started pressurizing the tank. Once it got above the indicated pressure on the cap, it would vent out this hole. Now your old factory tank had this feature as well. Everything has to have a pressure relief, but the factory, instead of having a dedicated hose you could route down to the ground, or if you really wanted to put it into a bottle just in case, factory, it just would have came out of the center of the cap, out the side here, and then get caught in this trough and just run down the back. So this is just a little bit more, you can direct it if something bad were to happen, instead of just all over the engine bay and into the fan. So what we're going to do next is take your Provide silicone hose. We leave it a little bit long, so you kind of have some options. Typically we'll route it down along in between the radiator hoses and the fan shroud. And I like to go kind of down along the frame rail and kind of tie it off just to the bottom of the frame rail there. So I'll just go ahead and route it all the way down. We'll leave it long in the bottom and we'll trim it afterwards. So get your hose pushed on. Actually, this hose is cut a little crooked, so let's do a straighter cut on that so it looks cleaner. Like so. And shove it on. And this doesn't need to have a hose clamp on it. Like I said, it's just a overflow precautionary overpressurization relief. So, and it's barbed well, and the silicone hose grips really well, so good to go. Now that everything's bolted down and torqued down, last thing we're going to need to do is fill our system with coolant. Now, if you're able to recover the coolant in such a fashion that it didn't get contaminated, you can obviously reuse it to fill back into this tank. Alternatively, this is really a good time to just go ahead and flush your system if it's been a while. So there's a drain on the radiator. You can go ahead and drain that out, drain it all the way, and then close everything up, and then go ahead and fill it all the way up. So we're going to grab some coolant and go ahead and get this thing topped off. So now we're going to top the antifreeze off. And if you look at your factory tank, the factory fill line is about an inch below the top of the reservoir. And again, this is an expansion tank, so it can have a little bit of a range. So just within an inch or inch and a half of the top, and you're going to be more than good at cold. That's the only time you're going to want to check these anyways. You can't pull the cap off when it's pressurized safely. See if I can do this without spilling anything without a funnel. And once we get it to about an inch from the bottom, we're going to go, or from the top, we're going to go ahead and start the car up before we put the cap on it. Let it run for a little bit, make sure there's no little air pockets. But really, since we didn't drain the entire system, it's pretty straightforward. Now, if you did go ahead and take this opportunity to service your coolant system and drain it out of the radiator, instead of just pouring the coolant in like this, which you can do, I would recommend doing the vacuum fill procedure, which if you don't have one of those tools, you can, of course you can get everything on Amazon, but Harbor Freight sells them as well. And they're pretty affordable, but it's a contraption that would go on here. It's got like a little gauge. You hook an air hose up to it, creates a venturi, and then it will suck the system down, and then you put the other line into the coolant bottle and it will fill it. The advantage of those systems is you don't get the air pockets so much as you would when you're just pouring it in. But with this, just doing the straight tank swap, we should be fine. But like I said, let's go ahead and start the car up and see if we get any bubbles. And if not, we'll adjust the level if it does and put the cap on it, and you're basically good to go. Aside from that, just maybe rinsing and cleaning some stuff up. But let's get this car fired up and see what we got. Now we went ahead and ran the car a couple minutes. The water did circulate a little bit. Looks like it might be able to take just a little bit more, about an 1.75 inches from the top. So let's go just a tiny bit more. All right, and that'll work there. Now, the other thing I would say, again, if you did a full flush of the car, the other thing I would suggest is after you filled it up like this, go drive the car, do a good heat cycle, come back home, and then next time before you take off, when the car is cold, go ahead and pull the cap off and just one more double check to see the level if it moved any after you've done a complete heat cycle, with the thermostat opening and closing and all that good stuff. But if you just did the tank itself like this, typically you're not going to be getting to the thermostat to create an air pocket anyways. So last but not least, we need to go ahead and get our cap on there. This new tank, since it's updated to the 15 up style coolant thread cap, is also going to come with a newer style Ford cap. You can select to get our billet cover that goes on top of the OEM cap, which really dresses it up. We got it in different colors as well, but black always seems to go with about anything. So this particular one is optioned in black. You'll hear a little click at the end. That means it's all the way tight. If you'll notice on the cap, there's going to be a little tang right here. That's what it goes over when it locks in the rest of the way. When you go to loosen it back up, you'll hear that click as you go past it. So that is tight all the way. Tank looks really good. Last but not least, if you spilled any coolant, go ahead and clean that up or give it a little rinse, wipe it down. And then don't forget to keep an eye on our channel to like and subscribe, because you will be able to see any other new products we got coming out. Have a good one, guys.